In Washington, the official narrative is one of celebration. You can almost hear the champagne corks popping. We are told that a great victory has been won. A surgical, decisive strike has, in one fell swoop, neutered the Iranian nuclear threat, a problem that has plagued the world for decades, solved. The White House is projecting strength, confidence, and absolute control. A triumph. It all sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Almost. Too wonderful, too neat, too clean for the messy, brutal reality of geopolitics. Because while the victory speeches are being written and the congratulatory calls are being made, a simple, uncomfortable question hangs in the air, refusing to dissipate. A question so obvious, yet so dangerous to the official story, that no one in power dares to speak it aloud. Let's cut through the noise. Let's set aside the triumphant press releases for a moment and look at this with the cold, hard lens of logic, because the story they are selling us is built on a foundation of sand. While they broadcast images of resolved strength, whispers in the intelligence community have begun to turn into audible warnings. Cracks are appearing in the facade, and it is our job to look at those cracks, because what might spill out from them is a truth far more terrifying than the one being told. The central claim, the very pillar of this victory, is that Iran's nuclear program has been neutralized, that its most fortified, most important enrichment facilities have been crippled. They want you to sleep well at night, believing the world is safer. They want you to believe that the dragon has been slain. But here's the question, the one they are avoiding. If the victory was so total, where is the uranium? Where are the enriched materials? Where are the centrifuges? If a factory is destroyed, you can see the rubble. If a program is annihilated, you should be able to account for its most dangerous components. The silence in response to that question is deafening. And it is in that silence that our story truly begins. Because we are not the only ones asking. The silence was just broken, not by a whisper, but by a thunderclap. A classified document from an internal expert group assessing the strikes has been leaked to CNN. This isn't speculation. This isn't rumor. This is the first official internal assessment from the experts themselves. And what it says should chill you to the bone. The document focuses on the primary target, the heavily fortified mountain entrenched facility at Fordo, the crown jewel of Iran's program, and the conclusion, written in the cold, bureaucratic language of intelligence, is a dagger to the heart of the official story. The conclusion reads, "Objective not achieved." Let that sink in. The primary goal of this massive, world-altering military operation was not met. This isn't just a news report. This is the first official crack in the carefully constructed wall of a lie of monumental proportions. And it begs the question, if the official story of the strike is already falling apart just days later, what other horrors is it hiding? The official response to the CNN leak was predictable and revealing. When the truth becomes inconvenient, you do not engage with it. You attack the messenger. The White House press secretary appeared, armed with righteous indignation, accusing the media of a coordinated campaign to discredit the president and undermine the authority of the military. It's a classic maneuver, a smokescreen of patriotism, designed to obscure a catastrophic failure. But this tactic only works when you have a unified front. It only works when everyone is reading from the same script. And that is precisely when the real story began to unravel, because behind the scenes, the script had been set on fire. The unified front was fracturing into a dozen pieces in real time. What we witnessed in the 48 hours following the leak was not the fog of war. It was the chaos of a cover-up falling apart. It was a masterclass in panic. The president himself, perhaps feeling the pressure, made a stunning announcement. He claimed that the success of the operation had been personally confirmed on the ground, not by American forces, but by Israeli special forces. He stated, with absolute certainty, that Israel had sent a team into the Fordo facility after the strike and had verified its total destruction. He assured the world that nothing could have been moved out, because the US and its allies had acted with blinding speed. Now, let's pause and analyze this claim. Let's apply the slightest pressure of logic to it. The President of the United States is outsourcing the confirmation of his own military's primary objective to a foreign power. Why? Does the most powerful military on Earth not have its own satellites, its own intelligence assets, its own methods for bomb damage assessment? Furthermore, he is claiming the covert ground operation by an ally into one of the most hostile, heavily defended territories on the planet, an act that would itself risk a major war, occurred within hours of the strike. It is an extraordinary claim. It is, to be blunt, a strategically nonsensical claim designed for one purpose: to create a headline. That sounds definitive, hoping no one examines the details. But people did examine the details, and the entire narrative collapsed. Within hours, Reuters published a report citing senior Israeli officials. Their response to the president's claim of a secret Israeli Special Forces operation: they knew nothing of any such operation. Let me repeat that. The very country Trump claimed had confirmed his victory was now officially denying any knowledge of the event. This is not a simple disagreement. This is a direct, public refutation on a matter of extreme global importance. It's a partner nation effectively calling the President of the United States a liar on the world stage. Then came the intelligence community, speaking through Axios. Their assessment was more cautious, but equally damning. Israeli intelligence services, they reported, had not yet come to a final conclusion about the outcome of the strikes. They were still analyzing, still gathering data. The picture was incomplete. So, we have a bizarre spectrum of reality. On one end, you have the American president declaring total, confirmed annihilation. In the middle, you have the intelligence professional saying, "We don't know yet." And on the other end, you have Israeli officials flatly denying the very existence of the event that was supposed to confirm the victory. This isn't a crack in the facade anymore. This is a gaping black hole. The story is not just inconsistent. It is actively at war with itself. It is a stunning display of incompetence and disarray, broadcast for our allies and our enemies to see. In the end, after all the noise, all the accusations, and all the contradictory reports, the landscape became starkly clear. Only the people on the entire planet were publicly stating, with 100% certainty, that the mission was a success. President Trump and his subordinate, Pete Hegseth, the politician and his mouthpiece, standing alone against the silence and denials of the entire global military and intelligence apparatus. The question is no longer if they are lying. The question is, why are they so desperate to sell this lie? What are they trying to hide? The question we were left with was, why? Why the desperate, clumsy, self-immolating lie? Why would a world power risk such profound international embarrassment? The answer is the reason this story transitions from a political scandal into a global security nightmare. They are not lying to cover up a simple mission failure. They are lying to hide the fact that their actions have unleashed a scenario infinitely more dangerous than anything that existed before the first bomb was ever dropped. To understand the sheer scale of this catastrophe, you must first understand the fundamental paradigm shift that has occurred. Before this ill-conceived operation, the Iranian nuclear program, for all its menace, was a known quantity. It was a problem, yes, a grave problem, but it was a contained problem. Think of it as a monster in a very strong, very well-observed cage. Through a fragile combination of international agreements, satellite surveillance, and on-the-ground intelligence, we knew where the cage was. We knew how big the monster was. We monitored its breathing, its feeding times, its every twitch and roar. The entire global strategy, whether through diplomacy or sanctions, was based on one single, critical principle. We knew where the monster was. The goal was to keep the cage locked. The strike, this supposed act of decisive strength, did not kill the monster. It simply blew the door off the cage in a blinding flash of hubris. The United States and Israel did not eliminate the threat. They unleashed it. They have traded a visible, monitored program for a black hole. They have traded a problem they could see for a nightmare they can now only guess at. What does missing uranium truly mean? Let's be very clear. We are not talking about missing documents or a few stray barrels of yellow cake. We are talking about highly enriched uranium, the fissile material that constitutes the very core of a nuclear weapon. And we are talking about advanced centrifuges, the sophisticated machines required to enrich that uranium to weapons grade. These are not things you can build in a garage. They are the products of a massive, state-level industrial effort, and they have now vanished. They are off the grid. They could be on the back of an unmarked truck, heading down a dusty road to a hidden, underground bunker. They could be on a ship, sailing to a rogue state. They could be sitting in a warehouse in Tehran, waiting to be sold to the highest bidder. We do not know. The most honest, and therefore the most terrifying summary of this entire debacle did not come from a critic or a journalist. It came from a United States Senator, J.D. Vance, a man from the president's own party. In a moment of horrifying clarity, he said, quote, "We buried the uranium, and now we have to talk to Iran to find it." Read that again. We buried the uranium. He doesn't mean it literally. He means that through our own actions, we have forced Iran to take its most precious, most dangerous assets and hide them so deep, so far off the grid, that we are now blind. And the only way to find them is to ask the very regime we just bombed for help. The strategic impotence is absolute. The mission of the entire Western world has been flipped upside down. It is no longer about preventing Iran from building a bomb. It is now a desperate, global scavenger hunt to find the bomb-making kit that we effectively told them to go and hide. This is the failure they are so desperate to conceal with lies about successful strikes. They have created a black market for the apocalypse. So the question that should be keeping you up at night is no longer, will Iran one day get a nuclear bomb? That question is obsolete. The new question, the only question that matters now, is, who has the materials right now? Is it a hardline faction of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, unaccountable to any government? Is it a third-party nation that has just acquired a fast-track to nuclear capability? Or is it the ultimate nightmare scenario, a non-state actor, a terrorist group with a blank check that has just purchased the keys to Armageddon? A disaster of this magnitude does not simply happen. It is not a force of nature, a hurricane or an earthquake. It is built. It is constructed brick by brick, bad decision by bad decision, until the structure of stability finally collapses under the weight of its own folly. To understand the nightmare of today, the missing uranium, the panic search in the dark, you must first understand the moment the lights were deliberately turned off. You must understand the original sin, because none of this was inevitable. There was a time, not long ago, when the monster was in its cage, and the world had its eyes squarely upon it. That cage was called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal of 2015. It was not a treaty of friendship. It was not based on trust. It was a cold, pragmatic, and deeply complex piece of strategic architecture, designed for one purpose: containment through verification. And by every objective measure, it was working. Let's look at the facts, because they matter. Under the deal, Iran was forced to slash its stockpile of enriched uranium by a staggering 97%, shipping its excess material out of the country. It was forced to dismantle and put into storage over 2/3 of its centrifuges, the machines that enriched uranium. Its most advanced models were taken offline entirely. The core of its heavy water reactor, which could have produced weapons-grade plutonium, was filled with concrete, and most critically, Iran submitted to what was, at the time, the most intrusive and comprehensive international inspections regime ever negotiated. Inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency had access to Iran's entire declared nuclear supply chain. They placed cameras, seals, and sensors. The world was watching. The IAEA, the global nuclear watchdog, repeatedly certified that Iran was compliant with its obligations. The cage was holding. But some people don't like cages. They prefer the illusion of having slain the monster to the difficult, continuous work of keeping it contained. A campaign, driven by political ambition and regional power plays, began with the singular goal of destroying this agreement. The primary argument, sold with impressive rhetorical flair, was the existence of sunset clauses, the fact that some restrictions would expire in 10 or 15 years. The argument was, essentially, that we should burn down a perfectly good house today because the roof might leak in 2030. It was a stunningly short-sighted argument, ignoring the reality that key verification protocols were permanent, and that a contained problem in the present is infinitely preferable to an immediate crisis. This campaign was spearheaded by figures like Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who in an unprecedented act in 2015 addressed the U.S. Congress to lobby directly against the sitting president's signature foreign policy achievement. He warned that the deal paved Iran's path to the bomb. The supreme irony, of course, is that his successful campaign to kill the deal is precisely what has put Iran on the threshold of nuclear capability today. It has become a self-fulfilling prophecy, orchestrated with breathtaking political skill and catastrophic strategic consequences. The goal was never just about the nuclear file. It was about preventing any possibility of a diplomatic rapprochement between the United States and Iran. which would have reordered the balance of power in the Middle East. And so, in 2018, the original sin was committed. President Trump, swayed by these arguments, unilaterally withdrew the United States from the agreement. He tore up the deal, not because Iran had violated it, they hadn't, but because he had been convinced that a better one was possible through a policy of maximum pressure. In reality, it was a policy of maximum folly. It was an act of strategic vandalism. In a single moment, the U.S. removed all the constraints on Iran's nuclear program, and simultaneously, it blinded itself by forcing the inspectors out and ending the verification regime. We took the cameras away, smashed the locks on the cage, and dared the monster to come out. And it did. Iran, freed from its obligations, began enriching uranium to higher and higher purities, installing more advanced centrifuges, and building up its stockpile far beyond the old limits. The withdrawal created the very crisis that the recent military strikes were supposedly designed to solve. This present disaster, the missing uranium, the frantic scrambling, the humiliating need to contemplate a ransom, none of it was an accident. It is the direct, predictable, and logical harvest of a seed planted years ago, the seed of hubris, sown in the soil of political theater. So, what do? What is the next move on the chessboard when you have willingly, proudly, knocked over all of your own pieces? You have abandoned a functioning agreement. You have launched a military strike that failed to achieve its primary objective. You have lost track of the very nuclear materials you set out to control, and you have been caught in a web of clumsy, contradictory lies while the entire world watches. You are trapped, not by your enemy, but by the consequences of your own catastrophic decisions. What is your next brilliant, strategic masterstroke? From the depths of this self-inflicted crisis, a new plan has emerged from the White House. A plan so audacious, so counterintuitive, that it could only be born from sheer, undiluted desperation through back channels and diplomatic leaks. The world is now learning of America's stunning new offer to Iran. It is a proposal of breathtaking generosity. The United States, the same nation that just dropped bombs on Iranian soil, is now offering to help fund Iran's civilian nuclear energy program. And the price tag attached to this offer of sudden friendship, a reported $30 billion. Let us take a moment to fully appreciate the magnificent, pretzel-like logic of this policy. Step 1. Tear up a deal that strictly limits and monitors Iran's nuclear program. Step 2. Impose maximum pressure sanctions that cripple their economy and incentivize them to accelerate their nuclear work in secret. Step 3. Launch a military strike to destroy this newly accelerated program. Step 4. When the strike fails and you lose the nuclear material, you turn around and offer them a fortune to have a nuclear program, just a peaceful one this time. We promise. It is a foreign policy doctrine that can only be described as strategically schizophrenic. It is an approach that defies all known principles of statecraft, negotiation, and basic cause and effect. What message does this send to Iran and to every other rogue state and aspiring nuclear power on the planet? The message is dangerously clear. Defiance pays. Creating a crisis works. If you can withstand the pressure, if you can successfully hide your most valuable assets, if you can make the United States look foolish and impotent on the world stage, they will not only come to the negotiating table, they will come bearing gifts. You are actively rewarding the very behavior you claimed you were trying to punish. You are paying the arsonist to help you put out the fire, and even offering to help him build a newer, better regulated firehouse afterward. The absurdity is poetic. And the number itself, $30 billion. Let's not allow that to become an abstract figure. It is a sum of money that could rebuild the infrastructure of a dozen American cities. It could fund breakthrough medical research for a generation, but instead, it is being presented as the price tag for failure. This is not an investment in peace. It is not a gesture of goodwill. It is a ransom. It is, perhaps, the most expensive ransom in geopolitical history, being paid to find a threat that we ourselves created the conditions for, and then promptly lost. It is a global announcement of weakness, a white flag of desperation disguised as a diplomatic communique. This is the ultimate humiliation. After all the bravado, after all the threats and the talk of total domination, the reality is this. Washington is now in a position where it must politely ask the regime. It just attacked for its cooperation. The leverage has completely shifted. The party that is blind, the party that is panicked, the party that has lost control is the United States, And the $30 billion offer is the proof. It is the price of admission back to a negotiating table from which we foolishly walked away years ago. This sets a precedent that will haunt the world for decades. The lesson for North Korea, for any other nation with nuclear ambitions, is simple. Don't negotiate. Don't comply. Build your program in secret. Create a crisis. Make the problem so messy and so dangerous that America has no choice but to pay you to solve the very problem you created. This isn't statecraft. This is a mugging, where the victim is paying the mugger for the privilege of not getting hurt worse. After having first handed him the weapon, we have walked through the anatomy of a lie, the chaos of a cover-up, and the cold dread of a nightmare realized. We have traced the path of this disaster from its origin to its panicked, desperate present, and so we arrive at the final question: what comes next? The answer is no longer a matter of speculation or of political debate. It is a matter of cold, hard, strategic inevitability. The choices made have set in motion a series of dominoes, and we can already hear them beginning to fall. The first domino will be the Iranian nuclear test. There is no longer any serious incentive for Iran to stop. They have seen the West's ultimate military option fail. They have seen the world's superpower reduced to offering them a multi-billion-dollar ransom out of sheer desperation. They have all the leverage. A successful nuclear test is now their ultimate security guarantee, an unbreakable shield against any future attack. It is a symbol of their victory in this conflict, a declaration to the world that they have outplayed, outlasted, and outmaneuvered their enemies. Sometime in the coming months or years, the seismographs of the world will register a tremor in the Iranian desert. It will be the tremor of a new nuclear power being born. It will be the sound of checkmate. The fall of the first domino triggers the second, the great arms race of the Middle East. Do not be naive enough to believe this will happen in a vacuum. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Iran's mortal enemy, will not, under any circumstances, live under the shadow of a Shia bomb without possessing its own. They have the money, and they have allies in nations like Pakistan who can provide the technology. Their acquisition of a nuclear weapon is now not a question of if, but when. And then, Turkey, with its own neo-imperial ambitions, will follow. Egypt, to maintain its status as a regional heavyweight, will be forced to pursue the same path. The Middle East, already the most volatile, hate-filled, and unstable region on the planet, will become a multipolar nuclear powder keg. The old logic of the Cold War, the balance of terror between the rational superpowers, will not apply. Here, this will be a web of ancient rivalries, religious fanaticism, and territorial disputes, all armed with the power of the atom. The third domino is the global order itself. The Non-Proliferation Treaty, the cornerstone of arms control for half a century, will be rendered meaningless. It will be a historical artifact. Iran's success will have provided a clear, undeniable playbook for any nation wishing to join the nuclear club. Cheat, deny, absorb the pressure, and you will eventually succeed. The treaty's authority will be gone, its purpose defeated. The era of trying to contain the spread of nuclear weapons will be over. A new era, the era of managing a world with dozens of nuclear states, will begin. And this brings us to the final, sickening irony of this entire fiasco. After all of this, the most disturbing thought is this: given that the nuclear material is now lost, given that the cage is broken and the monster is loose, the best case scenario, the outcome we should now almost be praying for, is that the Iranian state itself is the one who recovers its own material and builds its own bomb. Why? Because a state, even a hostile and fanatical one, is a rational actor. It has a return address. It has cities that can be turned to glass. It has a population. It can be deterred. The alternative, the true heart of darkness, is that this missing, weapons-grade uranium finds its way into the hands of a nihilistic terrorist group, a group with no state, no territory to defend, and a burning theological desire to see the world engulfed in fire. An actor that cannot be deterred because it welcomes its own destruction. That is the true abyss, and that is the possibility that has been unlocked. They promised us they would slay the monster. Instead, they have given birth to a world of monsters and handed them the fire of the gods. This is not the world we were promised, but it is the world they have built.